We have Rolf Gerritsen, CEO of MetalNRG, which is a company that invests in assets in the natural resources sector. We spoke to Rolf not so long ago, and since the last time we spoke to him, we've actually got a presentation pack he wants to share with the shareholders. So before I carry on, hi Rolf, how are you?
Very well, Rob. How are you?
Not too bad, thanks. A bit more exciting than a standard podcast this time round. So what we'll do is, for those who are listening as a podcast, the presentation pack will be available on the ShareTalk website, and I think Rolf, you're going to also put it on your website as well.
Yes, it will be. It will be on our website as of tomorrow morning.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well, without further ado, I think then if we crack on with the presentation, then Rolf, if you want to take our listeners through it, that'll be quite good.
Perfect. Thank you, Rob. Much appreciated. And thank you for offering the time and giving everyone an update on MetalNRG. The purpose of today is really to bring you up to date on Goldridge, which is our gold mines in Arizona, which we visited over the last few weeks, and I really wanted to report back on what we found and the progress made. We had a very good trip. It was very exciting, and I'm delighted to be able to give everyone an update. Very brief disclaimer as usual. I'll take it as read, but more importantly, just backtrack a second and look at our strategy within Goldridge itself. What are we trying to do with Goldridge? We're basically trying to exploit historic workings to generate cash flow, and that will enable us to put these three mines back on a sustainable production for the long term. So it's really trying to develop the Goldridge mine with capital coming out of the mine itself. And I'll explain a little bit more about that in just a moment. In terms of background, it's brownfield gold exploration and a redevelopment opportunity, which has a significant potential upside. When we looked at acquiring this particular mine, we worked on three assumptions for the acquisition to make sense. The first was that we have a historic mine that could be brought back into production without huge capital outlay. The second assumption we worked on is that there is within the mines a substantial amount of rubble and waste dumps that have been left behind, which contain ore which can be monetized in the short term. And third, there are opportunities because there are a number of areas that are currently unexplored that offer potential exploration upside. So the purpose of the visit when we went back to Goldridge this time was really to start looking at these working assumptions in much more detail. We validated those three assumptions during our due diligence and felt quite comfortable that they were realistic assumptions. We now went back and really started digging a little bit deeper and saying, let's really validate this. And more importantly, let's put together a phased plan of work to actually start implementing the strategy that we've developed. So from that sense, it was a very productive visit, because I think from my and also the team's reaction to the visit, we were absolutely delighted with what we found, and are excited to the extent of the potential being quite significant in our opinion. Bit of further background. We're talking about three previously producing mines, 85 miles east of Tucson. It's a mining district. It's a very favorable and friendly mining jurisdiction, and considered to be, I think, the second in terms of U.S. and ninth globally in terms of friendly jurisdiction. We've got about 138 hectares owned outright and patented claims, which give us access to quite a large piece of land that we can work with. Within that area, we have three previously producing mines, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about about those. This is the picture you see here is the road that leads up to the actual mine itself. And if you look at the picture on the right hand side, you can see the mountain, and that is actually one of the two mines. And I'll start zooming in a little bit so you can see it in more detail. And this is the more detail. On the right hand side, just above the 1,000-meter mark, there is a gray patch. That is the entry to one of the key mines. If you then work your way upwards and leftwards, you can see some roads and some tracks, and that is a second mine and a second working area. If you then track even further left, you can see some additional roads going from the left of the picture upwards to the right, and around the middle of that is a further mine which we started looking at in greater detail. So if I then break this down, if you take the first mine, this is what is interesting here, because we have at the base where the yellow line starts, we have the entry to the mine itself, and that's called level 6, and that works itself up to the top of the yellow line, which is a level 4 portal. It's another entry point to the mine. So if I then start looking at that again in a bit more detail, this is a narrowing or a focus on the entrance of the mine. And you see the lighter gray patch, which is outside and out the road and outside of the road. Well, this is a historic waste dump from the mine that is easily accessible and is, as I said, outside of the underground workings. We found records in our database, which is quite substantial in terms of information, that a sample was taken of this dump, and it showed that there were 21 grams per ton of ore in this particular sample. This was a sample that was taken in 2010. So the first thing we now want to start doing is exploring this in greater detail. We believe and are quite excited about the opportunity that this offers us access to some immediate cash flow. So the plan here is phase 1 plan, which we'll be doing over the next month or two, is drill a number of holes. The yellow dots there represent various holes, and that will help us determine the exact quantity of ore that is in the dump and how much and what the depth is. We know that in length it's about 215 feet, and in width it's another 110 feet. What we need to do is determine the exact depth of it, and then we can actually establish, based on the samples that we're going to take and the drilling that we're going to do, we're going to be able to determine the exact amount of ore that is available. At the same time, we're in the process of identifying a mill in New Mexico who would actually take this ore on and process it for us. So that, as I said, phase 1 piece of work that we're going to be completing over the next few months, that hopefully will give us a very clear indication of what call it a quick win, is available to us. We then have we then have phase 2 as an opportunity. Now we're going back into the mine. So I've gone from the dump that I've outlined here. We've gone into the entry point, and we've gone in at level 6 portal. So this is one of the tunnels that actually leads into the final stage where this particular mine was previously mined. One of the big questions that we had during due diligence was, why had this mine previously closed? And no one could ever give me an answer, because no one really knew. But what we found out this time around is that the reason this particular mine closed was not because of lack of ore. It closed because the owners of the mine had actually mined this particular area that we're looking at the picture of, and they had shipped all of their ore away to the mill to get produced, to get processed. And those particular trucks vanished. They were stolen. As a result, the company did not have any cash to proceed further. So anyway, there's just an interesting side story. But this then takes us into the mine, and this is the last point at which this particular mine was actually mined. And previously, there was a belief that we had to go and drill from around this position downwards to go and track where this particular, or where there was additional ore. So step back a second. Historically, what happened here is narrow vein mining. The vein had been lost at a certain point because of faults within the terrain, and that means that the vein had shifted, and the belief was that we had to go and drill downwards to go and find the actual vein. What we found when we were on site is that the incline of this particular tunnel is not downwards, but it is upwards. And that is interesting because looking at the diagram here, on the far, it's a bit complicated, this, or not complicated, but not the greatest diagram. But let me explain. The line at the bottom is level 6 tunnel. At the end of that is where that picture was taken. So right at the end on the left-hand side is where the picture was taken. We believe that because the incline is going upwards, we believe that we need to be drilling from the outside back inwards to find the ore. And that's what we're going to be doing during a phase 2, as opposed to drilling from inside the mine downwards. The option we're taking is a cheaper option, and it gives us the opportunity to move on very quickly if we don't find the ore that we're expecting to find. But this is a good opportunity, we believe, because of some of the tracking of the actual waste that we've looked at quite carefully. That's a phase 2. We then got very excited because we moved on to what's called the Davies mine, which is the second mine that I showed you previously on the slides on the far left of our property. And we found a map in our database dated 1934. And we didn't get too excited about this, but we then moved on and we actually found another map that had been developed, which is dated between 1934 and 1940. We got very excited because we saw 2 comments on the far right-hand side of this map. I don't know if you can see them, but on the far right-hand side, there are written annotation that says 17-meter chutes of ore and all ore substantial opportunity. We then went onto the site and started having a look at this, and we don't have current access to the mine. But if this holds true, and we're going to go and verify this over the next few visits that when we go there, but we'll go and verify this. This could potentially offer us huge upside in terms of opportunity. It's not only that we saw and got excited about the maps, but we actually saw on one of the previous previous pictures, which I'm going back to, that this particular mine, which is here on the left, actually has a waste dump just outside the point of the particular map that I showed you. And it is, if you take the road that goes from left upwards to the top of the slide on the left-hand side, there's an outcrop towards the top of the actual picture. And that outcrop shows us one of the dumps, which is just above this particular point of the map that I showed you previously, which is showing which had that very interesting statement. So, cut a long story short, we've now broken up the work to be completed into 3 phases. Phase 1, we're going to go after the dump that is outside level 6, and that could be a quick win towards generating cash flow. Phase 2, once that phase 1 is being completed, is to go and drill a number of holes from outside of the mine back in towards level 6 to find the ore that we hope to be able to find. And then phase 3, 4, 5, and 6 is to start looking at the major upside that the Davies mines offers in terms of potential upside exploration opportunity. So that's, in summary, what we've come back with from Arizona, and as a result are very excited about the opportunity that Gold Ridge offers. And with the gold price where it is at the moment, I would say that's could potentially be a very nice cherry on the cake for us.
Great. Well, it certainly sounds like the Goonies, where you've found a real treasure map, and it looks like that's going to be quite exciting, the phase 3 side of it. Just so
it's a bit like detective work, because the data that we have on these mines, first of all, was scattered all over the place. I think it was in about 5-6 different states, and we had to pull it all together. And then we actually started analyzing. I think there's something like 17 gigabytes of data in there. So it's a hell of a job just trawling through everything and then finding these little peaches of information, and then going on site and finding things that date back thus far on maps is fascinating.
Oh yeah, it's just a pity they didn't put a big red X on it as well for you. But just so I understand, so the first phase, that's accessing quick cash. Do you have a timescale in mind of when that will kick off?
Yeah, we're kicking that off as we speak. We're literally finalizing the planning process, and we'll probably be on site again within the next 10 days. The idea is to drill something like, we'll probably end up with something like 200 samples, something around that. That then goes off to the lab. Probably by the beginning of October, middle of October, we'll have the results and we'll know exactly what we have, and then we can progress that if it is to be progressed.
Okay, and just to confirm,
so more news middle of October.
Right, and did you say that with the phase 2 that's going to run in parallel, not obviously at the start of phase 1, but if you're going in and you have phase 1 underway, that you're going to look at starting phase 2?
To kick off phase 2, we need to clear the road that goes from the base, level 6, up to level 4 of that particular mine. And that will run concurrently with phase 1. So the clearing of the road runs concurrently with the looking at the dump. Once we've established exactly what the dump offers us, then we'll be in a position to look at phase 2. But my suspicion is that my inclination at the moment is to run these phases sequentially and not in parallel, because I'm trying to make sure that we fulfill the strategy. And the strategy is use the previous workings to generate the cash flow to progress this into production. So I need to make sure that we have the cash flow from the mine to feed into the next stage, and therefore I'm playing it sequentially. Okay.
And the logistics wise, everything's already, you've got a road up to the mines already in place, so there's not too much, I'm guessing, you have to do around that, other than obviously some of the logistics between the phases. But for access to the mines as it is, that's fine, is it?
Access to the mines is generally very good. We managed to access on foot, well, by car, level 6, and then level 3 and 4 we access by foot. The other particular mine we can access by foot. But once you start getting some machines in there, you need to be able to have more stability. And just to give you an example, between level 3 and level 4 in the middle of the road is a carcass of a cow. Well, we need to remove that. We can't just drive over it. So things like that and a little bit of bush needs to be removed. Not big stuff. It's small and not intensive labor, but it can be removed quite quickly and it will be cleared quite quickly. Access is good. Access with machinery, we need to just get in place and make sure we work that during the next phase.
Okay. I think obviously that's quite exciting news, and there's going to be a lot more questions that will come from shareholders about this, I'm sure. So we're going to probably talk to you again at some point, Rolf, just to sort of answer those questions. There is one question I wanted to ask, which is not to do with Goldridge, but previously when we talked, there was talk of a new asset. Is there anything in mind that you've got?
Look, there's ongoing conversations. We're looking at 3 possibilities. All of these possibilities would meet our requirements in terms of relatively early cash flow generative projects. However, they are conversations. While some are further ahead than others, they are only conversations at this point in time. Nothing has been finalized, nothing has been secured, but it is an ongoing process. And I'm pushing hard to try to bring an additional asset to the company in a relatively short period of time. But nothing has been firmed up just yet, Rob.
No, it's not a problem, Rolf. Well, like I said, for those who are listening to the podcast, I advise them to have a look at the presentation pack that's either on our website or on MetalNRG's website. And we'll leave it for now, and I'm sure we'll be speaking to you again, Rolf, fairly soon.